Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. This time, Tribunal from DS9 here on It's All Been Tracked Before. You know our Tribunal. You can see us all the time. Get deeper into our Tribunal. Follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Tracked Before. That's what we are out there. It's spelled the same way it sounds. You can find us. Get involved. We got a lot of fun memes, memes, GIFs, mostly memes. Very funny, lots of fun. And tell us what we're doing. Hopefully you tell us we're doing good. But, we can take it. We're tough. We've been through this much Trek so far. We can handle it. You can handle this. This is Tribunal. Deep Space Nine on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Stephen.
And Keik.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk about Tribunal, the penultimate episode of Deep Space Nine Season 2. What are your first impressions?
My first impression was I didn't realize it was that late in the season. I saw your message later saying it's going to be a season wrap-up. So I'm like, what? Just kind of flew by. Well, everything does, doesn't it? Just in general for this pair of episodes, I have enjoyed I think the contrast of having just wrapped up TNG helped. It's nice to see a show that you can tell is on the way up as far as we're getting into something. It's therapeutic, soothing, something like that. Like we still have more of this to watch, and even though this other thing's gone, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Steven.
Yeah, I'll say one of my other cliches. I think it was probably, I think I did like it. I think it was less than the sum of its parts, but there's a lot of interesting parts. And again, I think it's part of the advancement of understanding the Cardassians and all that stuff and learning more about them and that kind of stuff. So, and
you're going to have your lawyer hat on here.
I did write that down. It's more a comparative law study once again. And I need to get going on that. the real world comparative law study class about Star Trek but we'll get into that. But we'll get into all that. That's a good enough first impression.
I liked it. It did not hang the moon.
Yeah,
I'll take
you. Pick me up. Right? You pick me up. Thank you.
Since Keith's already got the background on.
Yes, he did.
No, I liked it. I mean, Keith and I were talking about a little bit off air that in comparison to like Next Gen Season 6 or Season 7, it would probably be towards the top. In comparison to DS9 Season 2, it's probably more in the middle. But that's compared to what it's around it, like context. I thought it was a decent standalone episode. I appreciated getting I wouldn't say we got any character development for Miles, but we got character development for the marriage between Miles and Keiko, and I appreciated that. And as Steven said, we get some real insight into the Cardassians and some new information that we don't know that I really appreciated. And I know, as it's already been mentioned, we batched this with the season finale, and we just watched both of them. And while the season finale has some major implications for the rest of the series, the Cardassians, despite the fact that they've been here since the beginning, also still have major implications for the rest of the series. And so getting to know the Cardassians a little bit better, I think does help fill out what we need to expect for the next 5 seasons. So overall, decent, but it is what it is.
I started off thinking, I'm going to really love this. And then at the end, I'm like, I never ended up loving it, but I still, we'll get into it.
I will say, and this might be an unpopular opinion, I don't tend to like O'Brien episodes. I love O'Brien. I love O'Brien. I don't love O'Brien episodes. I think he rarely works as the center of an episode. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I would be like apologizing to you. Or like I'm surprised to hear that, actually. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just.
Of course,
I don't think it's Colmini's fault. I just don't think they ever wrote him. They ever gave him an episode well enough for him to like the storyteller, which I don't love, might be the best O'Brien episode. We've already watched that.
That's the one where they think he's the god or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
The story tells.
Yeah. And I also thought made me think of the TNG episode where
that is the best O'Brien episode, was the TNG episode. Yeah. Even though it wasn't a lead. Yeah, absolutely. So
I'm sorry, I appreciate the way they sort of called to that toward the thick of the trial itself. That was, I thought, probably one of the most powerful scenes. And he was really fired up, and they just dropped that on him. He couldn't deny it. It was there. So
so much of continuity gets dropped in Star Trek, especially in these earlier shows. I really appreciate that they took this one episode of Next Gen where we learned a lot about O'Brien and built his whole DS9 character out of it. Like the hatred for Cardassians, the previous military experience, all that stuff like comes up again and again in DS9, and I love that. I love it so much. I love the character of Miles O'Brien. I really, really do. I just wish he'd gotten better stories where he was the center. I think he has better moments coming up. It just not better O'Brien-centric episodes. So,
Right.
Well, and to that point, the episode starts off fun. I'm actually enjoying KeikO'Brien. I was actually a little
for the first time in both shows, right?
Yeah, I was a little miffed that we had to go on to this other dark thing.
Yeah.
We start off with O'Brien taking the vacation, and he's very reluctant to take a vacation. I loved the little like peek up the turbo lift when he left, and then he comes back and he just kind of looks over the floor. I mean, I don't know if turbo lifts actually work that way, but if anybody could make them work that way, O'Brien would.
Yeah, it was a very funny open, and that was delightful. And then he runs into our guy played by John Beck. I should have his character name. Boom. That's it.
Best known for Rollerball, Sleeper, Audrey Rose, and Black Day, Blue Night. 113 credits.
Yeah, he was in a lot of stuff, and you named my two favorites, Sleeper and Rollerball. And I think I was okay with this in this instance. Again, I think that it was like, oh, we're just going to tell you right now, there's something weird about it. There's something wrong with this guy. I mean, and I guess we could have felt that already. Like, why are they having him talk to this guy on his way to his vacation? But I didn't know it was going to go where it went. But so I think I actually appreciate them being like, we're going to wait to tell you exactly what happened. But just so you know, this guy's up to no good.
Yeah.
I'll play back the voice and stuff in the shadows. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he was surgically altered, right? Is that what we ended up finding out? Okay. Because I was going with shapeshifter, and I thought that was going to tie to Odo.
No, you're a little early in the series run for that.
Okay.
Plenty of that coming.
Oh.
But yeah, Boone. Just that exchange was weird and stilted, and absolutely, I agree with you. There'd be no reason for it if they weren't planning something and they played it. But then we go to O'Brien and Keiko in the runabout, and I wrote down they actually do love each other. Who'd have thunk it? Like, their interplay with like him bringing the tech manuals like Scotty would do, but he's actually married, so he puts them aside for his wife, and I was like, okay, I'm in this.
Yeah. I thought they were going to stick with I'm going to take, but as soon as he abandoned, I'm like, okay, this is really nice.
Yeah.
If only Scotty had found the woman, but Scotty was too involved in the tech manuals to ever look up to find a woman.
Speaking of guy that didn't get a good focus episode. Well, you know what? Wolf in the Fold, I do actually still like. Lex's Atar. Let's move on.
Lex's Atar doesn't exist. It's not an episode. There's only 77 episodes of the original series. There's only 70 episodes of the original series. I don't know what those other 9 you're talking about. Lex's Atar, Charlie X, Tomorrow is Yesterday. Those episodes still exist.
There are 70 episodes.
I've seen them all. I've seen everything.
No, the Lights of Zatar is what made me think of it.
Yes,
like 5 Lights of Zatar. Yeah, so, okay.
I liked it. The runabout, the chairs don't recline. It might not. It's not like there's somebody sitting behind you that you can't like run into.
Yeah.
That to me was a little bit weird because it's like, why would you make chairs not recline if they can? Because I think of runabouts like shuttles, except they have warp, so the more long range that, they'll take the shuttles to a conference. They'll be on the shuttle all day. You'd think they'd recline. Similar like runabout. Somebody's going to take a nap in that runabout. I guess the runabout's kind of a separate bed chamber to take a nap in where the shuttles don't. But still, if you're in the runabout by yourself or with one other person, you might want to nap in the cockpit so that if like the alarms go off, you're right there.
Yeah.
We get another glimpse of our old friend Golovec. It felt a little bit weird that they brought back Richard Poe to play that part. Like there was no reason to have a Cardassian we knew. They must have really liked Richard Poe and like, let's give him one more episode.
I always liked him, but I agree.
Last appearance.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Didn't it feel weird and forced in to make it a Cardassian we knew? If you're gonna do that, why not do Cot? Avek's more of a next gen character.
Yeah.
I was wrong. It is not Golovec's last appearance because he does do an episode of Voyager.
Hmm.
Believe it or not.
Actually, maybe
He is in the pilot of Voyager.
maybe it serves a purpose to have like a next gen Cardassian because of the background they brought up of Miles having said that he hated Cardassians, et cetera, et cetera.
He'll never forgive them for the death of his son.
Yeah.
I hated Cardassians. I always will. I'll never forgive them for the death of my boy.
Huh.
Never mind. That's a Kirk film reference.
Okay, I was like, what? Oh, before I go, I wanted to say about the trial.
Yes.
And just something about the interplay of the lawyer himself. I think there was a really good blend of old and new Trek as far as the style of it. There's something where they lean into something that's blatantly dystopian, and it was so far into it that it's like the phrase that occurred to me was that they kept saying the quiet parts out loud. They did not. It was so normalized. They did not care.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we know why we're here.
Well, yeah. I mean, the second they come on the ship, I wrote down Cardassian jurisprudence is the exact opposite of ours. Shocking. I mean, they were literally saying the opposite of, you're guilty before proven innocent. You do not have the right to know what you've been charged with. It's on and on and on.
Nice.
I'm like,
you do not have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and do cannot be used against you, which was an odd twist, but if you're doing opposite.
Later they say it's against the law to decline to answer. To which I say declining to answer is an answer. So that would have been I'm like, on the contrary, Your Honor, that decline to answer. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Nice.
If you decline to answer. Anyone who says I'm not going to dignify that with an answer, you just did.
Well, we're losing Keith. Bye, Keith. Right. We'll miss you.
Luck.
So O'Brien's arrested. They make a big point of, and we're going to take Keiko home. And she's whatever. That is so freaking sexist, the way they treat that whole situation.
Yeah.
What really bothered me is like, are you confiscating the runabout? I understand you're confiscating O'Brien and you're confiscating the evidence from the runabout that we don't know about yet. But why would you not just let Keiko fly the runabout home? Why do you have to fly her home for her?
That's a good.
What happens to the runabout?
Question.
Why is that not?
Are they in that instance? Are they actually trying to keep the crime scene unchanged? Yeah, is she?
Oh yeah, that's weird because at this point they don't tell you necessarily that they've got the evidence in the runabout. I guess they kind of imply it, but it's like my thinking was like if you get pulled over drunk driving or whatever. And they take you out of the car. Your wife that's in the passenger seat, she just gets to drive the car home, right?
That's
like they're not going to escort her home and take your car.
Right. Like if it was involved in an accident or if you hit somebody, regardless, then they might. But in that instance, no. Yeah. And like, are you okay to drive? Yeah. Get out of here. Yeah.
Right. They strip O'Brien down, but they did let him keep his underwear. I thought it was odd they let him keep his underwear, but then took hair and a tooth. Although I guess that's kind of explained later. But
I wasn't sure if he had anything on or not. I didn't look that close. When he's in the chair, I thought for a second, like, am I seeing Mike Colmeany's butt crack? But
I know when he's in the chair, there's full boxer shorts on.
Okay, all right. I was just like, if I thought I never thought the first nude O'Brien I would see would be Miles, but
I thought it'd be Molly when they give her a bath because she's a child and that's allowed.
I do like making it innocent. That's a good way to go. I do think in a weird reason it made it even more grim, and then especially when later they're like, he knows what you guys do, he knows how terrible you are. So, and I thought Colmeany was really good during all that. And I didn't know what they took out of his mouth at first. I didn't realize it was a tooth.
It was tooth.
I was like, so I thought they found something in there, like a communicator or something had been, but that wouldn't make any sense because the shift, not the shift changer, but Boone, doing the other stuff. That did make sense. But
did keep waiting for them to ask him how many lights there were, but there was only one, so I guess it wasn't as important.
Well, and apparently there really only was one because that courtroom was so dimly lit. It was, which, Lens, I think it was you or Keith saying, the dystopian feel.
That was Keith, yeah. It was dystopian feel.
Yeah.
They talk about sending ships to the border during this incident, and they mentioned that the Enterprise was sent to the border.
Yes.
It's a little bit disappointing to me that we won't see the Enterprise again until Generations, which is months later, but it's equal parts disappointing and exciting. Like, oh, you hear they're getting to do something, but we don't get to see it.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like if this was a two-parter, if they hadn't just done the season finale they did, if they weren't like building a series arc, if they made this a two-parter and we kept going back and forth to the Enterprise D patrolling the border, that would have been a kind of cool alternate episode. Not my alternate episode I wrote down, but or if Next Gen was still airing, like doing them as like the companion pieces that were taking place simultaneously, but of course they didn't do that. And Avec would have been the character that crossed over between the two.
I think, this is that same conversation with Cisco where Keiko starts making McCoy-like demands, like, you got to do something. And Cisco's like, what do you want me to do?
I'm a commander, not a diplomat.
Right. He's like, come on. Although I do love in that next, I think it's the next conversation. Is that where, where Cisco's like, Makbar is like, Mr. O'Brien is being treated with great care and respect. And Cisco's like, good, because if he is not, I will hold you personally responsible. And if that sounds like a threat, it is. I was like, yes.
Oh, I love the making it outright open threat.
So
I thought that was great. And I mentioned this to Keith before you got on, but the first 2 seasons of the show have not felt like they're about Cisco. The way that Next Gen always felt like it was about Picard. Even the episodes that weren't about Picard, enough of them were. That it was about Picard. And the original series, of course, was about Kirk and Spock. But DS9, when I remember DS9, I think of the show as about Cisco. And I forgot how little the first 2 seasons make it about Cisco. I will say they make up for it in the next 5. But these early DS9, it's like, I don't know if it was just they were trying to account for, maybe our white audience won't tune in for a black captain, so we'll do more with the supporting characters. I don't know if that's the reason. That feels like the reason to me at this moment, and that sucks because Cisco can absolutely carry this show, and thankfully he will get the chance to carry this show. But yeah, in this episode, he got moments where he shined and carried the show, and I really appreciated that because I feel like it's been lacking overall.
I enjoyed that. I always enjoy when a captain, is like, here's what's going to happen. It's all cool. And Cisco's obviously, Avery Brooks is, like I said, that speech was great. It was.
He's my favorite Trek captain, including New Trek, as much as I love Pike, Anson Mounts Pike. He's still my favorite Trek captain, and there's a reason for that. And we haven't seen that yet, but I promise you we will see Avery Brooks shine. Although while we're talking about Avery Brooks, we should mention he directed this episode.
Yeah, that was interesting.
He directed 9 episodes of DS9, but this was his first. I think he'll direct 3 next season and like 1 each for the last 3 seasons because he gets a lot more to do, so he stops directing as much. But he gets to direct like multiple the next couple seasons as he's making up for it.
But I love that speech, that line.
And coming out of that line, I really liked the way they use a side character of establishing Odo already does have credentials. He can volunteer, he can go help, and it makes sense because of his history.
Right.
Again, that's something DS9 does differently. Next Gen so rarely brings in a character's history, and if they do, it's typically like quick throwaway, we're done. Whereas DS9 just keeps bringing that stuff back up. Like, yes, Odo is an officer of the court. He can come serve the court.
Yeah, I enjoyed that for many reasons, and then because actually I often forget that as an attorney, I'm an officer of the court, actually. So I've been told that several times while in court, like, well, you're an officer of the court. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. So it wasn't my reaction. My reaction is exactly the same as Odo. It was like, I'm an officer of the court, unless I'm just trying to impress somebody. Like, well, actually, I am an officer of the court, so there. But which I guess is what Odo was doing. But him jumping in was like, all right, stakes raised, and it made it more interesting as well.
You've been told that in court. Yeah. You've been told that in court as a defendant?
Oh well, not yet. Representing a defendant, yes. That. But I often forget, like, I'm just here as an attorney, which it does make me an officer of the court. But I often forget that context. But
defense attorneys, I would imagine, and you can tell me if I'm wrong because you're much more invested in this. But imagine that prosecutors much more often feel like officers of the court, whereas defense attorneys, because they're against the system in a way.
Yes.
I mean, they're part of the system, but that's not the way the court trial unfolds, right?
And and people who are down there more often. I mean, I guess you got your public defenders, which we get into that here as well. Who, he's obviously part of the system or whatever. But when you get to people that even guys that are downtown a lot, I don't think they feel as much of part of the court as much as a public defender or obviously a prosecutor. Even though, which in some ways gives them, maybe makes it easier for them to attack, if you will. But, that's a weird, it's interesting balance. And I guess from the outside, you almost like, well, you want a defender who knows the system and knows everybody's on friendly terms so he can really represent his client. But on the other hand, you don't want someone who's a buddy like our boy here, whose name is escaping me.
Kovot,
yeah, who is, I wrote worst public defender ever. He's the Washington Generals of
he's considered the best in their system.
By their system, which I wrote at some point when they're talking about swift justice. I was like, so really, their system isn't so much different from ours here. It's like Texas. It's very much like Texas. I think that was when they mentioned the capital punishment. I was like, oh, so Texas.
Well, and the fact that the verdict's already determined before you even get to court. So Texas. Yeah. Or any of the extremist judges that have been appointed in the last. Anyway.
You mentioned listing in Texas already are like, yeah, you're right.
So you mentioned Kovot, played by Fritz Weaver, who's best known for Creepshow, the Thomas Crown Affair, 1999 version, Holocaust, which was a TV miniseries in the 70s, and Marathon Man. 142 credits. I thought he did an excellent job in this. I appreciated his performance. The character obviously had a lot of issues, but it wasn't the act. Like, he played it very convincingly. And he's just an officer of the court, and that's his role. And I did like that portrayal, even as much as I hated it.
And I was just talking about public defenders or whatever, and I generally had good experiences with public defenders I've dealt with as an attorney and as an interested party, if you will. But I think there is that, like I was just alluded to, there's that tough balance of, and they kind of got into it here. And obviously this is an exaggerated form of it, but it's like, he's got all this status as the best, but also, is he really representing his clients? And it's hard to tell. And, is he getting along to get along kind of a thing? But also, lots of times in this country and many countries, I'm sure, and depending on the court and then the city and everything, it is stacked against the defendants. Not everyone's like that guy that, by this time is probably doing jail time. But, for the average citizen, it's, if you're using a public defender, obviously, and again, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, you're not getting the best person, but quite often you're getting a good person. Like I said,
you sound like a liberal commie.
Yeah, well, lots of the public defenders I've dealt with have just been like, they're trying to do the right thing, and they've got a full caseload, but sometimes, and as an attorney myself, there's been times, where you're like, man, we could fight the power, but it might just be better to that's where you get into plea bargains, or we're going to cut this deal, or here's the angle to go with.
Which is 95% of court cases these days.
Yeah, exactly. So, we could go this route, but do you want to spend the time and the money? And sometimes people do. And those are the people that delay courts, and they can stay in court for a while and get by and stuff. And sometimes prove their innocence in certain instances. But
his role seemed largely ceremonial, and he was really good at fulfilling the ceremonial role.
Yeah. And Fritz Weaver is always, like you said, he's got a ton of credits. I remember him from the Martian Chronicles as well. That was one of the things that I always remembered him from, among many, many others. But you named some of his bigger, cooler things too. So
it's just weird to me to try to wrap my head around that this guy is presented as representing the accused, but essentially he's the prosecutor, because he lays out the case they have against his client. So it is like a combined role, because there's only one lawyer in the courtroom. But, and
I think it was, and I don't remember, maybe point of view or whatever it was, matter of perspective, the one with Ms. Apgar. I remember in that episode, I think it was that episode where I argued where the guy was he was actually he was the judge and the jury and the prosecutor in their form of jurisprudence. Yeah, they're using the name public defender, or made me think of public defender. But yeah, they're mushing things, and I think a good job, even though obviously it's a different system. We're talking comparative law here, but
well, because the Cardassian court is you've already been found guilty before they bring you to trial, so the whole point of the trial is just to demonstrate the evidence and give you a chance to apologize.
Yeah.
And it's not. There's no purpose of bringing up a defense because there isn't one.
Your sentence isn't going to be mitigated. Yeah.
I mean, they did though. They did mitigate the sentence, which had to be. I mean, the way they ended this episode, I'm like, man, that had to have caused a public uproar. And like, oh my God, the 24-hour news networks like Cardassian were like, this has never happened. How did he get away with justice without getting sentenced for justice?
Well, and then when Odo says, well, you won. The look on Bocat, why do I keep forgetting?
Bocat?
Look on his face is great. I mean, Fritz Weaver's really doing a great job emoting underneath all that makeup. It's like,
he did.
Yeah, it's great.
I think overall, they do a excellent job across Trek of casting really great Cardassians. As much as I love the Klingons and how well developed that race is, like if I think of who they get the best actors for alien wise, it's Cardassians. It really is. They're way more interesting and individualized than say Romulans, in my opinion.
Yeah, which unfortunately, but early Romulans got great stuff. We did find some good Romulan episodes, but yeah, it's just not the same.
Yeah,
and again, yeah, you're right. I think it goes to, well, we're living in a Cardassian Bajoran world, so they better have a bunch of really good characters and actors in there. So
I can't think of. I mean, obviously, we're going to forget the Cardassians that aren't as compelling because there's probably plenty of those. Yes. But there's a lot of good Cardassian characters. I mean, Gul Dukat, of course, top of the list. But and the character he played on Next Gen, the same actor, Mark Alamo, with the facial hair, Cardassian, was great too.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. In my notes, I'm still back to where Sisko's just finding out what's going on. And I really appreciated in that scene, and for the next couple scenes, Kira allowing that O'Brien could be guilty. Like, you wouldn't see that in Next Gen, but with these different non-Starfleet characters, you have room to have somebody go, well, he might be guilty. I like that.
I enjoyed that too. And we've talked about sometimes in episodes where it's like, well, I'm going to speak this point of view. I'm going to speak that point of view. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, TOS did it all the time. It's like, McCoy, what do you think? Spock, what do you got? All right, here's what I got. Or Scotty, whoever. So,
well, I think Mark of Sisko as a great captain. That Kira's like, what if he's guilty? And Sisko's like, well, we need to know that too. Like, yeah. Like Sisko allows for the possibility, even as he's defending O'Brien left and right publicly.
Yeah,
I do think, and again, I don't think I was registering this the first time I watched this, but I am loving the Sisko Kira Captain XO dynamic so dearly. Like they have a really good balance and a really good dynamic between the two of them. So,
and Kira leaving that door open that he might be guilty is also, interesting in that she's the Bajoran who you'd expect to be like, those Cardassians, I'm sure they're doing this, and maybe she's okay, and we know she's conflicted with the Maquis, right? Because the Maquis.
No, she's not a Maquis.
But she's not a Maquis, but she's conflicted, right?
I'm sure she has sympathy for them.
That's it. That's.
But she never crosses that line,
right.
To date anyway. I won't tell you if in the future she does or not, but to date anyway, she has not crossed any line of doing anything to support them. So, yeah. The absolute infallible justice system makes ultimate safety in the society. Man, wouldn't that be nice if it were true? That's almost like some Minority Report level crap.
1984, yeah.
Very dystopian. We're always right, so of course our society's safe. Like, you can walk the streets at night because if they're guilty, we're going to get them. So deterrent, the ultimate deterrent. Ugh. Man, it may just 2024 lens of hating our current justice system and hating our current policing system really makes this ring so awful and creepy. I
Yes, it
don't
does.
think in 99 or 2000 or whatever, I guess this aired in like 95. I don't, or 94.
Yeah.
I don't think in 1994 I would have been thinking that way. But now I'm like, oh God, this is awful.
Yeah, I mean, I was just starting law school, but although I feel like not only my law experiences, but just real world experience outside of that is completely different now. You know, just my world perspective is much different. So, yeah.
I find out there's some photon warheads that have been stolen. And
Mhm.
while Kira is thinking O'Brien's guilty, we have Bashir thinking that he's innocent, which I liked. Best friend, gonna stand up for his friend no matter what.
He got very agitated.
And then both Dax and Cisco take the middle ground of let's
Mhm.
follow this evidence where it leads and we're not going to pass judgment one way or another. Again, I feel like if this were Picard and it was Geordi or Worf or Data or Riker who was arrested, I should say Troy and Crusher too, but it's always the guys in these
Right.
stories, unfortunately.
Right.
I feel like Picard would have maintained they were innocent no matter what. And I think Cisco makes a little more allowance of they might be guilty, which doesn't mean what's happening to them is right. But let's get all the facts so we can figure out what to do. And I think
Well,
Dax is that same type of pragmatic character of, I'm not going to judge you necessarily if you're guilty, but I'm going to leave open the possibility you might be. Let's follow the evidence where it lays.
and I guess the other part of that is because I'm thinking of, you know, the menagerie, but, you know, these guys, for the most part, are still getting to know each other, right? Like Odo and Kira kind of have a history, but it's
And Odo and Quark have history.
in Quark, yeah, but everybody else is still getting to know each other. And in theory, you could say that on
seasons
TOS.
in, so I think I mean, if you remember, this season started with Kira leaving, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, we love you so much! I can't believe you're leaving, even though we've only served with you for a year."
Right.
So I think they've tried. It's funny now to be like, "Oh, we're not that close. We don't know each other that well." When a year at the beginning of the season, you were like, "No, we're all so close."
Yeah.
I think the end of the season is more realistic. Of yeah, we've served together 2 years, but we haven't spent a lot of personal time together. So Kira hasn't built those personal connections with O'Brien and Bashir and whatever yet. You know.
Well, I guess Menagerie could be similar, although you know, at the end of episode one, at the end of part one of Menagerie, Kirk's, you know, he's all in for Spock, but then, you know, the very end of that first half, he's like, well, I'm not so sure here, you know, it's that shot of Shatner at the end, like, well, I'm not sure where this is going. I'm not, maybe I'm throwing it behind the wrong guy, but you know, he had no reason to believe otherwise, and really at the end, even though it turns out Spock did do all those things, yeah, it's for all the right reasons too. Well, actually, I guess the Telosians really did it, but Spock helped.
Well, right.
Yeah.
They mentioned the tooth is normally taken at age 10. Doesn't that feel barbaric? Can't you just take a baby tooth?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that accomplish the same
Right.
thing? Like when your baby teeth fall out, you turn it in?
Yeah. Well,
or do Cardassians not have baby teeth?
Yeah.
O'Brien really takes his oath to the Federation seriously. And I liked that scene a lot for Colt Meany. Look, I don't care what my personal feelings are. My duty is my duty. And and it's convincing to Odo. It's convincing to me. And because it's convincing to me, I get why it's convincing to Odo, even though Odo, like Kira or like Dax and Cisco, probably thinks there's a possibility he's guilty. I'm just here to like follow the evidence where it lays. And I'm also going to do this like favor for, I don't think Odo and O'Brien are close, but it does feel like there's a certain camaraderie that's forming. And I could see Odo feeling like he might be on the outside of it and wanting to do something to make him more inside of it.
Yeah, and you know, growing respect, and then I think also Odo, part of him is like, I just want to solve the crime. I just want to find out what actually happened. And if it ends up he's guilty, then that's the deal, and I'll be here.
Yeah. Dax confirms the voice recording is fake. Yay! And Kira finds Boone. I appreciated that it wasn't. Well, it might have been cool to just stay in the courtroom and do a court drama. I actually liked the investigation back on DS9 and all that coming together.
Yeah.
The lawyer, poor Kovat, he's 1 year away from retirement and he really doesn't want chaos. My heart goes out for him, and I do feel bad when he's like, but I've done everything I could. I tried to convince him, and I'm like, dude, because as messed up as the system is, first of all, I don't think he realizes the system is messed up. I think he has his faith in the system.
Yeah.
And when you've served it this long and he is trying his hardest to have his reputation and everything ruined for it. I mean, he says later in the episode, when they said, "What happened? You won. They'll kill me." Like, I think we are left this episode, if you think about it, that Kovat will be killed for letting O'Brien get away. And that sucks. That sucks so bad. And that makes this begging earlier of "I tried my best" so much more meaningful, because he knows what will happen if what does end up happening happens. Like, we never find out his fate. He doesn't appear again. He's never mentioned again. But I think there's a real possibility Kovat, after 40 years of loyal service, is now executed dishonorably because of this. And that sucks. And I feel like DS9 should grapple with that. And I think in later seasons they would have. In this season they didn't. But
I guess you're right. I mean, I was trying to think, well, could he have been saying it figuratively? But nothing in this episode would suggest that.
No.
Yeah.
It's possible, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
It's possible they'll let him slide because of the circumstance, and the judge was so involved in everything that went down. But I don't have faith that they'll let it slide. We should mention the judge, Macbar, played by Carolyn Lagerfeld, best known for Sweet Magnolias, Law and Order Organized Crime, Minority Report, which we mentioned earlier in the episode, and 10 episodes of Gossip Girl, where she played CeCe Rhodes. I loved CeCe Rhodes. Not a ton of credit, 100 credits, 101. Still active as far as I can tell. She has a 2024 credit. But yeah, now that I see her in her older age and without the Cardassian makeup, she looks super familiar to me. Character actress that's guest starred in so many things. Yeah. Back in Drew Carey's show in the 90s, she had a guest spot. X-Files, Nash Bridges, 6 Feet Under, like so many good shows. But never really broke out. She did a guest spot in TJ Hooker back in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I was going to mention that. Tangential.
But yeah, that doesn't seem to have ever broken out as a leading person. But yeah, so many good Weeds, How I Met Your Mother, House, Castle, all that stuff. Gotham. So anyway, yeah. I also wanted to mention another guest spot I saw for this episode on IMDb, Disembodied Cardassian Voice. And I don't even know what part of the episode that referred to. But Julian Christopher played that role, and he has another Trek credit. He guest starred in Code of Honor back in season 1 of Next Generation. Wow. Yes, he is a black actor. So he was one of those aliens in that super racist race. 113 IMDb credits, so quite a few. We won't go through them again because I'm sure we did when we talked Code of Honor. But what an interesting callback. Odo making a scene in the courtroom was effective. I almost went to be his Mr. Smith Goes to Washington moment, his standing up, but it wasn't. It actually was ineffective in the long run, which is more realistic and makes more sense. But I do appreciate that, because Odo is driven just by justice and knowing justice isn't being done here. I liked his reaction. It felt very in character. And I liked his line about, I regret I have no teeth to offer, when they say they're going to arrest him to hold him in contempt. We get a cool shady scene where a Maquis appears in the shadows. Maybe that was the disembodied Cardassian voice. I don't know. But that one makes sense because it's Maquis, so it wouldn't be Cardassian. I don't know. But there was the guy that appeared in the shadows that warned Bashir that Boone isn't one of them and that they didn't steal the warheads. It's so key to unlocking everything. But I also kind of dug this fact that you're going to give us a shadowy voice and then never reveal who it is or tie it into anything. Whereas I don't feel like Next Gen would have ever done that. You're serving some larger DS9 stories, and it doesn't matter who it is. It just matters that this isn't the Maquis. You're barking up the wrong tree.
That isn't, yeah.
Vet claims he can't tell them about his evidence because of national security. Wouldn't that be planetary security, not national security?
Something like that, yeah. And that was another line that rang true for, that excuse continues to be used. National security,
I'm sure it is, but unless Cardassia Prime, the entire planet, is considered one nation, which it could be, but I still think you'd use the term planetary security instead of national security.
I agree.
I think that was a writing faux pas.
Empire security or whatever it is.
Something that encompasses a larger area than national.
Yes.
Yeah. They mentioned this is the longest trial in the history of Cardassia.
Yeah.
It's only been a few days. Oh man, Yeah. That's both scary and also like, man, why doesn't our justice system move a little bit faster? But you don't want to move so fast that it doesn't do justice, although it's already not doing justice at its glacial pace. So, whatever.
Yeah.
What really struck me as this O'Brien trial was going down, and I know this is a very different show and they wouldn't have done the 90s, but this definitely plays into the alternate episode I actually have, is if we spent this whole episode knowing that O'Brien's innocent, but because of the justice system and the system we're trapped in, they execute him at the end. That's my alternate episode. It's very Sean Bean in season 1 of Game of Thrones, right? Like, you keep expecting the hero to be rescued because we had this episode and so many other hours of TV before where the hero wiggles out of it. And in Game of Thrones, they're like, yeah, now that you have this history of television telling you he'll be fine, we're going to behead him. I mean, I know it was the book more than the movie, because the TV show copied the book in that regard, but it felt very Game of Thrones and very like, modern TV wouldn't have let him off the hook.
No. Well, and I think next week's episode, getting ahead of ourselves, for me, it kind of went that way, but we'll get into that next week.
Well, Brian's such a noble character, and to have him give that speech of, yeah, I've killed Cardassians in war. You're accusing me of prejudice, but you have prejudice and I think O'Brien's definitely moving past his prejudice, and I wish he talked a little bit about that, but I liked him admitting his flaws. I liked the whole setup, and that's where I know DS9. I don't want Cole Meany gone for the rest of the series. I know that I said there aren't any great O'Brien-centric episodes, but I like his presence overall. So maybe that's an opportunity to bring in a guest star like Michelle Forbes as Ro or Jonathan Frakes as Tom Riker and execute them instead. And then you can still get some of the same impact because we care about those people. But the executing them wouldn't detract from these are our main characters. I still think it was a little too early in television in 1994 to bring in a major reoccurring guest and execute them that way. Like, they wouldn't have done it. They just wouldn't have done it. And so all of that makes me sad they wouldn't go that far, when I feel like modern TV would have done it and should have done it. They should have killed O'Brien at the end of this. Him surviving was actually bad storytelling, in a way. It was way too playing to the formula to reset everything.
I mean, definitely a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, Sisko and Boone coming into the courtroom and interrupting.
Because we always dog on KeikO'Brien. She says, actually, this isn't dogging on her. This is one little element that is kind of part of our system. When she says she has no intention of testifying against her husband. That's very American Constitution. You don't have to. Spouses don't have to. And then I wrote that I love when, there's the spousal abuse accusation. And I think, aren't they accusing Keiko of being the abusive one? Or are they?
Yes. They're trying to, that's what Kovat's trying to find the motivation behind O'Brien's actions.
That's right. He starts with parental abuse and he says, I see spousal abuse perhaps. Was your wife causing you severe psychological stress? I'm like, oh man. First, spousal abuse accusation. Then it's followed up by perjury when O'Brien says, my wife is the most wonderful, supportive person I've ever known.
I love that you call that perjury. I love it.
I mean, I really like KeikO'Brien in this episode, but yeah, at that point, everyone was like, wait a minute. Based on the evidence we've been presented, Mr. O'Brien, I will now, a reminder, well, maybe perjury isn't against the law in Cardassian.
Can I go out on a limb and assume that for once, KeikO'Brien's not your annoyance this week?
She is not. You're correct. Yeah.
Well, it's always, I thought you always said KeikO'Brien is the couple name.
Right. Okay. They are not. You're correct.
Even though it should be like Cake Isles or Maiko.
Yeah.
Because they're both the last name of both of them was O'Brien. She didn't take his name.
Push them together. Yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah. The KeikO'Brien.
When Sisko and Boone walk in and the judge, Makbar, immediately reverses course and releases O'Brien, I was like, oh, crap. I did appreciate, though, that it wasn't spelled out as explicitly as it could have been. Again, I think original series or Next Gen would have spelled it out more explicitly what was going on in that scene.
Yeah.
It wasn't super obscure, but it was better than it could have been.
Yeah.
I like the whole twist that Boone was a Cardassian. He's been hiding as a human for 8 years and he's trying to discredit Starfleet. Good long game.
Yeah.
And you could feel like if he gets O'Brien, he's going to go on other Rutledge crew, other people that fought in the war, you know?
Yeah. Well,
and did he get elders before O'Brien? Maybe, we don't know.
That's a good point. And John Beck, good looking guy as far as I'm concerned. So if you're gonna get facial reconstruction surgery, why not look like John Beck?
Cisco extends the O'Brien's vacation at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Again, good captain. Let them have their PTO. They need it. But I also really appreciate the O'Brien has nothing to read. That would drive me crazy. You're saying about vacation? I can't even bring a single book. But the thing is, they live in the 24th century. All he needs to do is have the replicator make him a tablet, download whatever book he's reading on the tablet, and you're good to go. You don't need to bring it with you. That's the thing. He had a stack of like 6 pads, and I guess that was supposed to be 6 books. But that's not future technology.
Is that a Samuel T. Cogley reference? That he really wants to have actual books in his hands?
No, I wasn't trying to. It was more just.
No, but I'm just thinking maybe that's what they're like. Well, this legal episode. Let's refer back to that guy who was really into books a long time ago.
I think it was more just they still were having trouble envisioning where future technology would go only 10 or 15 years later.
That's true.
Which is kind of sad. I do want to bring up the writer because we haven't talked about him yet. His name is Bill Dial. He was best known for being a producer on Earth Force, Legmen, Sliders in the 98 to 2000, so shortly after this, and codename Foxfire. In terms of writing Trek, he wrote 2 episodes of DS9. The alternate earlier this season, he did the teleplay by and story by. And then he will also get credit for a teleplay by for 1 first season episode of Voyager. But I looking over his credits, he has 22 writing credits for WKRP in Cincinnati. I guess it looks like he was a story editor 1 season. So maybe didn't write all those, but was a story editor and producer for 1 season on that. But yeah, writing credits on Simon and Simon, Evening Shade, the new WKRP in Cincinnati. He came back for it. Sliders. Wrote 8 episodes of Sliders. So yeah, so he's got his sci-fi creds, and I felt it was decently strong writing.
Yeah. My only other note is my alternate episode would have been Keiko the Avenger, where we find out that Keiko has skills.
Particular set of skills.
Yeah, and she goes in and busts them out.
I was going to say she goes on a revenge killing after they execute him.
Did they say where the daughter was?
Ollie? They said they left her with in the first conversation Miles and Keiko had on the runabout, they mentioned leaving her with another family.
That's right. Yep.
I did not miss not having the daughter in this episode.
No, it wasn't. It was not necessary. Oh, I was looking through the transcript. I've already moved on to the Jem Hadar, so I was like,
nice.
We got that up there. So,
who is your shady character in Tribunal?
Boone.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Keith and I both went with Macbar the judge.
Yeah, she's a good choice too.
She was also my annoyance, although Keith chose Kovat the lawyer. Which I thought he was just doing his job. I didn't feel like he was an annoying character because I feel like he was doing the job to the best of the ability and they were messing up his job and his day.
I'm gonna land with Keith, although I had the same, it was either the judge or him. I landed with Kovat just because I appreciate he's doing his job, but his job is annoying. So
his job is annoying, but he did not make it more annoying the way he handled it, in my opinion. So Keith and I are both having a drink with Odo.
Oh, that's good. I went with Miles because obviously he had a rough go of it.
He did.
I don't want to interrupt his vacation, but
when he gets back.
Yes, when he gets back. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I just think Odo had while a minor-ish role in this episode, a very interesting and meaty role for the actor and the character to do. Yeah. So I was pleased.
That they always find a way to, I'm going to say shoehorn, but make one of the guys who doesn't seem like their lawyer become the lawyer for.
Well, that's true. Yeah. At least they didn't bring.
MG did it all the time. Yeah.
At least they didn't have to. That could be another alternate episode that Miles calls the Enterprise D and they bring Riker in as his lawyer. He knows him. He'd come in and defend him. That feels like something 90s Trek would have done just to bring Jonathan Frakes in. I feel like if this had been like a 3rd season episode instead of 2nd, when they weren't filming Generations actively, it could have been Riker. But because they were actively working on stuff, he wasn't available.
I hadn't even thought of that. So we got here like, they like to, but
So
And it worked in those other episodes for the most part. So.
Keith and I did not rank the episode before you showed up, but I did get his opinion on roughly where it should go, because we talked about, again, if it were Next Gen season 6 or 7, it would probably be towards the top. With DS9 season 2 being as good as it's been, it's probably more towards the middle.
That's the way I feel. So
let's start by comparing it to the writer, Bill Dial's other episode, The Alternate. Better or worse than The Alternate? I'm going to say this was better than that.
Yeah, maybe it was just for me struggling to remember a lot about that episode. I've got it, the synopsis in front of me, but yeah, okay, yeah, I think I go above. Yeah,
above that's Profit and Loss, which is Cork love interest with the Cardassian woman.
That's the Victoria one. Is that one?
No, this was a Cardassian woman that Cork used to be interested in, returns to the station.
Oh, yes. Oh, with the students, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That one's a little closer, I think.
What's a little tougher to rank? Yeah. I think this is about on par with that.
Yeah, I could go.
Just for reference, the above that's The Siege, which was the third of the three-part season opener.
Yeah.
And I would definitely go below The Siege.
Me too. Yeah.
So does it go above or below Profit and Loss is what we're left asking. I will say my instinct is below, because Cork's more fun to watch than O'Brien.
My gut says that too. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I go.
And given that Keith agreed that we'd probably rank it middling, even though it was a really good episode, I think that's pretty good. That's ranking 11 of 25 thus far. So a little bit above the middle.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Next week, the season finale, the Jem'Hadar. While in the Gamma Quadrant, Cisco, Quark, and a strange telepathic woman are captured by the Jem'Hadar, the soldiers of the Dominion. Until then, live long.
Unless you're guilty under Cardassian law, and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?